Hello and welcome to The Prodigal Life. I'm Deacon Harold and I'm joined by Nick and Ellen. And we are here to share the beauty and truth of our Catholic faith in love.
Amen.
What are we talking about today, Ellen?
We're going to do faith in music. So,
Okay.
And it's a interesting topic because I've looked everywhere to try and find any type of information about music and how it relates to your faith, and mostly how your faith journey has grown. I used to listen to a lot different music than I listen to now as my journey's increased, but it still doesn't mean that I still don't like some of the old music I used to listen to, and trying to find the boundaries that go with that. And then how does it enrich your spiritual life, and does it, deepen your faith life? And so we're going to try to talk about faith and music. And of course, Deacon is a musician and Nick is a musician. I played the piano and the violin and the guitar when I was a child, but I don't do that too much anymore. But you all will have probably a really interesting take on that. And where is faith in music? Has it always been around? They always talk about the choirs of the angels singing and stuff like that. So I think maybe we should start there. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think so. You're right. For example, on Christmas evening, right? The shepherds are in the field, and then the hosts of heaven come, and the angels, and there's a choir angels, and they're proclaiming glory to God and singing.
And they're singing.
So music, I think, it was from God, right?
Right.
And music, for me, has always been an extremely important part of my life. My father was a professional musician, touring musician, a nightclub owner. My wife was in the Oregon Youth Symphony as a flautist. I played guitar, and I sang in choirs ever since I was a kid. Even in college, I sang in a gospel choir in college and played guitar in a jazz band.
Wow.
And played in an R&B band as well. And I play a lot of different genres of music, which I enjoy very much. And so for me, music, especially particular songs or particular groups, it moves you. There's certain, when you hear a song, you remember what you felt like. I remember I had a crush on a girl in 7th and 8th grade. And every time I hear, certain Barry Manilow song or so, I'm back in 7th grade again. I still remember ooh, wow, I remember that song. I remember what I felt like and what I was experiencing when I first heard that song, and the associations that we make with music. So I think music is important. And there's all kinds of discussions, right, about what music you can listen to, what you shouldn't listen to, but I think it's not so much about that. For me, it's about intention. But by listening to this group, what are you intending by listening to it? Are you just is it for entertainment? For example, look, if I'm on a treadmill or an elliptical, and, I'm supposed to be on there for 45 minutes. I get to 30, I'm like, your body's like, nah, just give it up. 15 more minutes, what's the big deal? But you want to,
right?
I can't listen to Mother Angelica pray the rosary those last 15 minutes. That's not going to motivate. It's beautiful. And on the plane, Mother Angelica all day.
Right.
But when those last 15 minutes of the elliptical, I got to listen to System of a Down or Eddie
Van Halen.
or Van Halen or Slipknot or something like that.
What's your favorite System of a Down album?
Oh man, I love a lot of that stuff, man. I don't know if I have a favorite album, but I've loved a lot of different songs.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm listening to when I'm on that keeps me motivated to keep going. But I don't integrate those things into my life every day. You see the difference?
Okay.
Yeah.
You see I think when people think about music, you should listen to the devil's music. Well, if you're using that as part of your worship, if you're using that, incorporating it into your being and how you act and how you think, that's a whole different thing than just listening to something for 15 minutes to get through a workout.
Yeah.
Where I'm not incorporating that into my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and there's also stigmas surrounding genres that just become way too crude of
It's devil
statements.
worship music.
Right. So System of a Down, for example, calling it devil worship music, and just because you brought that example up, dude, all of their music is one massive political statement, and
Yeah.
then each of their songs are micro political statements, and usually they have to do with terrible things that are happening in the world. And I forget what country they're from, but particularly in their
I
homeland.
think Croatian. Right?
No.
Or
Slovenia or something.
It's
they're one of those.
whatever it is.
It's a Slavic nation.
They have a great concern for the
Armenian,
people.
maybe.
I think
Armenian,
that's what it is.
yeah, that's what they are. Yeah.
And so, they're making political, and like other artists and like art should be, they use imagery, they use language that communicates that, sometimes in a very obvious, explicit way. And by explicit, I don't mean foul language. I mean like it's obviously the words that they mean. And in other instances, they're using metaphors and stuff that point to the truths that they're trying to communicate that are political statements. And so, do I agree with all of their political statements? I don't know, because I don't take the time to analyze them. But but I do know that they're communicating artistically things that matter immensely to them. And in no way does any of it worship the dark Lord Satan. That's not what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, there is music that does.
There 100% is music that does.
And it's just, trying to keep those boundaries. I mean, like back in the day, there were no boundaries.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a hardcore, industrial heavy metal. I mean, I've seen almost every heavy metal band that ever played. And I mean, I went to when I was at the Slayer concert, and the people in the outside, they were had flamethrowers shooting them through the air. And, and we used to go clubbing in the dark, and down in the dungeons and Honolulu and other place in LA and Hollywood, and you go to the Coconut Teaser, and that was pretty much that's what I did. And I loved heavy metal, and I loved industrial and alternative music, and especially in the 80s and 90s. I mean, that's where I grew up, 70s, 80s, 90s. And so, and every once in a while, I'll be like, man, is it okay if I listen to that? And like I shared before we started filming, every once in a while, I just have to get my Zombie on. I have
Rob
to go.
Zombie?
No, I like them too. But no, Zombie with the Cranberries. I have to have that song. And I'm like, well, it's about the Irish Revolution. And you know what I mean? I'm Irish, so it's okay, And it's trying to figure out what that looks like, because on the same, literally the next song that I could put on can be Tchaikovsky. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The Hymn of the Cherubim, which to me is where heaven and earth kiss. It's the most beautiful song I've ever heard in my life. And the first time I heard it, I cried, because I'd never heard anything that beautiful. I was like, how does somebody even hear that in their mind and put it down on paper so that we can have it forever?
Yeah.
So to me, music is just this tremendous gift, and I don't want to abuse it, because ultimately we're what are we? The Holy Spirit lives within us. God, we are the temple. Mm-hmm. This is the temple of the Lord. So you only want to really bring into it what will glorify God. So finding that boundary that's healthy, but still enjoying good music. It's a conversation that I've never heard anybody have, and that's why we're talking about it, because, I want to make sure that people know, oh my God, they don't think that heavy metal is good for you. Well, I'm sorry. I thought it was really good for me for a while. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it made me want to go out and, kill animals and do anything horrible, because that wasn't what it did. But I know that there's some songs where they don't sing about things that are definitely of God, or of loving your neighbor, or forgiving. I mean, there's a lot of songs with a lot of really negative things in them. They might have a really good beat, but I think for me, I just started looking for songs that maybe had similar beat or power or whatever, but they weren't doing something that was as offensive to the ears of God.
That's a great segue to something that I'm constantly torn about, and I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. But I hate that we for centuries, for millennia, as the Catholic Church, we were the pioneers of art and science and of a lot of things, medicine. Yeah. But focusing in on art, now we're playing this game, whether it's music or movies or whatever, where we're trying to be a cheaper second-rate version of what's in pop culture. And so I hate when there's a Christian band or a Christian artist that is so vanilla and so blatantly just trying to sound like whatever's in the top 40 instead of pioneering art. And so I don't want just a Christian rapper that is a Christian rapper because he liked rap and he's trying to make a Christian version of it and whatever. No, be a pioneer with your art. Make Christian rap that like isn't like other stuff. You know, like one example for me with like rock music. My favorite Christian rock band is called Red. And I learned recently, I've been a fan of them for years, and I only learned recently that that's meant to be an abbreviation of Redeemed. But Red is such an extraordinarily incredible rock band. Their music is so powerful, and to me, I can't stand Christian rock that is like, hey, we're rock, but we're singing about Jesus things. Like, it doesn't match up a lot of the times, you know? Like, you can't sing I Will Lift Your Name on High to rock. It doesn't feel feel like it fits. And so what I love about what they do is they are leveraging what rock communicates in emotion and in story, just sonically what it communicates, to convey messages and tell stories of like real languish and pain that people face or turmoil that they face spiritually. And it's so incredible what they've achieved with it. They have a few albums that are just okay, and they have a few albums that are extraordinarily good.
Okay,
so
I should check them out.
Yeah, they are excellent.
We'll put a link up on our site. You know,
Yeah.
I knew nothing about them, so that will be good.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts with me. Like, my favorite group of all time is Queen.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know?
Okay.
I'm a massive, massive Queen fan. Ever since I can remember, 9, 10 years old, there's something about their music, you know, the harmonies and
it's
Brian May's
phenomenal.
guitar playing, you know, that just moved me. But then some people say, well, Freddie Mercury was gay and he died of AIDS. Yeah, I don't approve of his lifestyle choice decisions, which cost him his life and cost fans at least 20 more years of music from them, you know? So, and so I don't endorse that, but so I'm able to separate his lifestyle. When I listen to Queen, I'm not thinking about Fred. I mean, I don't know anything about those guys really personal wise. I don't care. It's about the music. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with Slipknot, those guys, they wear these horrific satanic
terrifying.
devil mask and stuff like that. I would never go to one of their concerts, but you can appreciate the musicianship, right, and things like that. And the, you know, like, there's a song called "The Virus of Life," right? Like, as a guitar player, you're like, okay, I understand what he's doing on the guitar. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
that
yeah.
kind of
I
stuff.
feel
But
that
I
way
would
with,
never go to a concert. I would never fan club. I would never bring that into myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel that way with Korn.
Okay, yeah, Korn's another, right?
Metallica.
All of the Korn musicians were literally like professional jazz musicians that translate. Like, if you listen to some of the stuff and you know that they were jazz musicians, you suddenly start to hear their music in a new way.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the bass lines and the way that they use chords and stuff, even their lead singer, who a lot of times does really weird vocal stuff. Like, there's this one song where he literally starts it off by just totally a cappella. He's just like, he just does that. But then when you put it through the filter of knowing that they're jazz musicians, he's scatting.
Yeah,
He's doing
he
jazz
does
scat, but like
yeah.
a heavy metal version of it. And then lyrically, they're just constantly they're wounded people, and like they're communicating that in such an authentic way. Jonathan Davis, their lead singer, like clearly suffered so much trauma in his life, and he's communicating that through the lyrics. And yeah, it's dark, but it's an authentic human experience.
Right.
That, like, when you see a dark kind of haunting painting, that's coming from somewhere. And it's a different art form, but we don't stigmatize that because it's paint, right? Well, this is art too.
Music
It's a
can
different
definitely
Yeah.
definitely take you, and a lot of times, like you said, it'll trigger a memory. But sometimes it actually, I mean, it can trigger bad memories too. I mean, it can take you places that you don't necessarily always want to go. I mean, there's certain music like Nine Inch Nails, and then my daughter for a little while, she was really into screamo, so I learned all about screamo because I wanted to I liked music and it didn't really scare me. And like We Are Romans, holy mackerel, are they talented. Like, they are insanely, I mean, I'm not saying I love the screaming, but when they sing in the music that they do, oh my Lord. And there's others too that were just great. But then, like, I was really into industrial, like I loved Ministry. And if you've never listened to Ministry, it is just, it's almost that life through death. Like, that's how I would explain their music. Like, it builds and it builds and it builds and then it explodes. And I loved that about it, but then you go, there's some of the harder stuff, like when you're talking about, like Sophie B. Hawkins, damn, I wish I was your lover, and Jesse's girl. And, when you know that, like sometimes it'll come on the radio and you'll want to sing along. And then I sit there and I'm thinking, I really don't think I should really be singing about that. It's probably not a good thing to sing about. But, the song is catchy and it's a catchy tunes, but I've just learned through time. I'm like, yeah, well, that's really not what I want to glorify. So let's find something else that maybe is, like you said, you don't know everything about Queen, and I may not agree with most of the people that I listen to musically unless I get into, that's even true in the classical sense. There's some pretty intense classical people that had some pretty dark. Their music comes from some dark places. I
don't know about the historical accuracy of the movie Amadeus, but even just the depiction of Mozart's life, dude had some dark
look
stuff
at Beethoven.
going on.
Look at Beethoven. Look at Bach. They all. But I think that's probably where their creativity stemmed from, which is what you were saying, Deacon, that you can't get wrapped around the axle with who they are as people and become like a groupie and oh my God, I worship them.
I don't follow these musicians' personal lives. I don't care.
Right.
It's the music. That's what I'm appreciating. Like even Dream Theater,
that was who I was trying to remember.
You can basically, if you work out for an hour, you listen to 4 Dream Theater songs. That's it. Those songs are so long. But the musicianship, and when they, especially when they're doubling lines, the keyboard and guitar is like, what? They're insane. They're playing legato lines and they're playing 140, 150 beats a minute, and they're doubling perfectly in sync.
Amazing.
It's like, how did they? The level of musicianship. It's just that's a gift from God. You have to appreciate when you hear something like that. Oh my goodness, that's
well, it's like when Joe Satriani plays the guitar.
Oh so guys that are gifted like that,
and like Neil Peart on the drums, and Buddy Rich. I went to a Buddy Rich concert. Literally, it was Buddy Rich, and in an auditorium full of people, and literally for like an hour and a half, he played the drums, and it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life. And then when I was a child, my mother was sick, and so my dad took me to see Andre Segovia. Classical
classical guitar player.
That will change your life forever. I can remember just sitting there. He's dead now, but if you can ever look up Andre Segovia, though, you will just be like, how does anyone do that with a guitar? It's just an acoustic guitar. There's nothing phenomenally awesome about, you know what I mean? It's
like
just,
Animals' leaders, Tosin Abasi plays an 8-string guitar.
Oh, wow.
And it's like the stuff he's able to do on there is just nuts.
So let's tie this into our lives as Christians and Catholics. I'm constantly walking and I'm trying to judiciously walk this line of appreciating. So we're in the world, we're not of the world. Appreciating what is good, true, and beautiful to be found in these things. This is what we should have done is done this episode with a guest as Mike Tenney, the host of Pop Culture Catechism here at Awaken Catholic.
We can do another one. We'll invite him on. That'll be really fun.
But looking for the good, true, and beautiful in it, but also being intentional about not letting what is not good, true, and beautiful to impact us. And the challenge is that we as human beings are sponges. And so even in the example that I brought up of Korn, I loved Korn when I was growing up. Now I have to be really selective about how often, and whether or not I listen to it, because the musicianship, extraordinary. So much about it is to be appreciated, but then a lot of the messages and the stories in it are they're so dark. And even though it's not at all devil music, it's similar to me why I would struggle to walk through an emergency room and hear the people suffering, right? Or see the people suffering in the emergency room. It hurts. I carry a cross heavily. I had to get out of youth ministry because it was the business of heartbreak, right? You would take 3 steps, you would take 1 step forward with the kids on Sunday night at youth group. Throughout the week, they're with their families, and this was a really rough area of Toledo, and they would take 3 steps back, and it was just this constant struggle, and it hurts me to know that others are suffering, and so I have to be intentional with that example of Korn, for example. It's if I allow myself to be engulfed in those dark stories and memories that he's depicting in those Korn songs, I got to be careful with that because it will have an impact on me. Not because I'm going to like become, some dark, demonic, devil worshiping person. No, because that's not what they're doing anyways. But like, I just know that for me to be a Christian, I need to be someone that is filled with the joy of the gospel, someone that has hope for eternity, and that can be someone that radiates that to the people around me. And if I'm too engulfed in what those messages are, it's going to be impossible to do that. It's going to affect you.
Yeah. No, exactly right. I mean, they can't become a part of who you are.
Yeah.
Or it can't become a replacement for faith. Well, music is my God. You see what I'm saying? People do that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go to church because I could just walk in the woods. I'm not going to go to church. I could just listen to this song, and that's my relationship with God. No. I mean, so when music or art become replacements for faith, or it becomes your faith or the source of your faith, then that's a problem. Right? It's just like money's not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. You know, when money becomes your God, then it becomes your problem. Same thing when it comes to music like this too. It cannot become your God.
And a lot of that too is they build up. I mean, they actually. I mean, the media in general makes, like, look at the athletes. You look at the music stars or whatever. They portray them as gods. Like, you know what I mean? That's the portrayal. I mean, because everybody wants to,
they pay,
and so people spend a lot of time trying to emulate them. And, I think that's how we get groupies. I mean, there are still people that are traveling around following the Grateful Dead to this day, I believe.
I don't think they're, are they still?
But you know what I'm saying? Or Fish, like when Fish is on concert. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So, and I'm not saying it's not good to go to a concert, but I mean, can you imagine your entire life being, where are they going to be playing next? And that's where I have to be.
Yeah.
Imagine if anybody did that with God just for a year.
Well, that happens. You got people that give up their work, their jobs, or everything centers around. So they get these odd jobs in different towns,
right?
So they can follow the
music.
Band. That's no.
But imagine if you would do that, if you would make that effort, so that you could have a relationship, so that your eternal life was more important than your life here.
Yeah.
So
and is the music drawing you into relationship? Is it drawing you closer to God?
Right.
Is the appreciation of musicianship, raising your mind and heart to God? Are you thanking God that He provided someone that could, that could play that way? I mean, when I hear like Paganini, for example, the violinist, it's just like, what? I mean, who could, or Eddie Van Halen, like the techniques he developed on guitars, like he basically, because he was a concert pianist, so he took piano technique and transferred it to guitar. And in a way that no one's ever done before.
That's amazing.
And so that, I was like, how did they think of that? Just to appreciate that level of skill, it's no question it comes from God, and so that's, for me, I think it's an appreciation for the giftedness of these musicians, and then how some of the music, is just for just pure entertainment. But some of it also draws me deeper into a relationship with God. And that's the music I listen to, I think, the most. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Christian music. So I don't listen to really Christian music that often.
Well, most of it sucks, so.
Yeah, not all of it. I really like Danny Gokey.
The producer is crying right now.
I really like Danny Gokey. I really think his music. I
don't know who that is.
He's a Catholic Christian artist.
He won American Idol, I don't think he won it, but
he's Catholic, but he sings Christian. But his songs are not just like they're not corn pop syrup.
Well,
they are substance.
Just to be clear, I said most of it, not all of it. There are some exceptions.
Right. But and then there's the obvious music, which will draw you into that, which would be like Gregorian chant.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now there's the music of worship. And then we should talk about that. Like, what music is appropriate for worship?
Right. Oof. What is?
The worship of God in church. Because obviously I travel quite extensively. I'm in a different parish basically every week. And there's different music because I'm preaching at all the masses. So you have the folk choir, you have the youth choir, you have the Gregorian chant choir, so there's all types of music. And so the question, which is appropriate for liturgy and for worship?
And that is a conversation that is very difficult to have, Deacon, because like you have the traditional mass, which is, you know, they only do the cantata, and it's, you know what I mean? It's very, and that's at the high mass. And I think they have a sung low mass as well, but you know, in the traditional, but then in the modified church, the modified, you know, the Novus Ordo, yeah, the modified,
the ordinary form,
you know, because a lot of people have a problem with, you know, all the hymns that were very folky, that were very popular in the 70s. And, you know, for me, though, like my favorite song at church in that situation is I Am the Bread of Life. I love that song. Like, is it appropriate? I don't know that I'm the end all be all on that. You know what I mean? But I do know that some of them seem a little kitschy to me. I think it would be better to sing, you know, like I like to sing the older hymns, you know, the ones that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. I think there's a greater importance on those, but I know that some people like the comfort of, you know, the kitschy song. Yeah.
So there's two different topics within this question. One is genre and one is theme of the lyrics. And so to me, for example, back in those, you know, I'll just call it like it is, those gather hymnal days, which a lot of us are still in right now. We have a lot of songs that do not, in fact, worship God. You know, like there's this enormous emphasis on us in the songs. And we're not there for us. We're there to give glory to God and to encounter Him in the Eucharist. But we just have this obsession with a horizontal focus in our faith through the 70s and 80s. And basically, it's been an unfortunate fruit of people's misunderstanding of the Second Vatican Council.
The implementation of it.
Yeah, right. And so, you know, we have songs like "We Are Called, We Are Chosen, We Are Christ for One Another." Are we worshiping ourselves in this Mass, or are we worshiping God? Like, why are we singing about this?
Yeah.
Like, who gives a crap about how cool we are and what we're supposed to do? Like, that's not what songs are for. We're supposed to be worshiping God and praising Him through these songs. And there's so many examples like that. Come dance in the forest, come play in the field.
See, he knows them all.
And it's like, why are we doing this? This is the sacred liturgy where for millennia saints and sinners have knelt and prayed it's
hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, and so that to me is less about, even though I don't love that genre either, but it's less about that and more about the theme of the lyrics that we should really be
What is
judicious.
it pointing towards?
Exactly, yeah.
That's the question. Like when you're singing a song in church and you're participating in it, if you're in the Novus Ordo Mass, what is that song pointing to? Like what is it drawing? Is it drawing you closer to God? Or is it making you focus more on yourself?
Yeah, and it's all honestly that question serves as an analog for our lives. Like, what are our lives pointing to? What are we spending? What is the time that we spend, limited as it is on a given day? What is the time we spend pointing to? What is our priority?
I think you can ask that about the music too. Like when you're making a musical choice on the selection you're going to listen to, you know, what is that pointing? Is it pointing towards something to glory or to not? You know what I mean? And say, well, maybe I could find a different song. I mean, maybe even by the same artist. I mean, not every song by every artist has something that might be wrong in it. You know what I mean? So it's just a matter of making good choices that, I don't know, you can lay your head down at night and know, okay, I tried. You know what I mean? Like you said, I tried.
Yeah.
You know?
And that to me is what's so upsetting in a very blanket statement way about modern day Christian music is that there is this mechanism in place in the contemporary Christian music world that you have artists that are on a schedule and they're churning out albums and there isn't a focus on really developing something special that really gives glory to God. It's more about let's get the next album out so we can keep making sales and go back out on tour. And in contrast, the most profound and beautiful and transcendent ancient hymns of our church were written by theologians and St. Gregory and, you know, Thomas Aquinas was involved in so many of our beautiful Eucharistic hymns. And like, it's such a contrast to what the reason is that this music is being developed.
Correct.
On the one hand, it's for radio play and getting us out on tour and making sales, it's such a different thing.
It is, and I did bring up Danny Goki earlier. Like he's not on that train. He records and then he goes and spends time with his family.
That's beautiful.
And then he goes and really check him out. He's truly talented, and it's I agree with you because sometimes and then a lot of times theologically. And I'm not a theologian at all, but I know when I hear something in a song that's not right, and I just like back it up, and I'm like, what? What did you say? Because it isn't true to the words of God or the words of Christ. And you're like, oh, that seems like it sounds like a heresy.
Even the U.S. bishops in the past several years put out a kind of a warning or said don't sing these kinds of songs at mass.
Right.
So even they are attuned
to
the fact that there's issues there. But let's get cultural for a second.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I hear a lot, for example, if you go to a traditional Black Catholic church, and they're singing these traditional hymns, and they say, well, that doesn't belong, that's Protestant. Well, hold on. If you go to the Hispanic mass and they're doing the mariachi kind of worship stuff, you don't say that's Protestant. We go to Vietnamese mass, singing traditional Vietnamese hymns, which are beautiful. You don't say that's Protestant. We go to the Black church, you say that's Protestant. Hold on now. Hold on now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So because it doesn't have Gregorian chant, doesn't mean that it's not beautiful.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it's not of God. That means it's not worshiping.
Right.
So we have to make sure we're incorporating
That's
beautiful
such a good point.
cultural elements into it as well.
There's some stuff that I've heard from some Black choirs that is explicitly transcendent. I mean, some of the ways that they use harmonies and this guttural hollering of these passionate phrases and these chords from these massive choirs, that'll lift your soul, man. That'll lift your soul. That's beautiful stuff.
There's a Catholic hymnal called "Lead Me, Guide Me," that has Black Catholic hymns in them, and I've heard choirs sing songs that just elevates you, man. I have the same feeling with the Vietnamese choir in our parish. Whenever they sing, I don't understand what they're saying.
Doesn't matter.
Man,
but it's for God and of God.
It is beautiful. It definitely elevates you.
When I go to
that's
Spanish
what music should do in mass.
Yeah.
Elevates you, bring your mind and your heart focusing back on God. And the same thing can happen in the Black church. Not Protestant songs, that they're in the Catholic hymnal, but they're the way they express them, the culture, the angst, all the things from the past and now all that is being brought to the music. It's just
I love it when
beautiful.
you sing "How Great Thou Art" and "Amazing Grace."
Yeah.
A lot of people say, "Oh, those are Protestant," you know what I mean? And I'm like, they're powerful to me when they're done well.
Absolutely.
And in reverence.
I agree.
They will just make you cry. And I can still hear my grandmother, and she was a Congregationalist, and I can still hear her in the kitchen in there, plucking her beans and whatever, singing "How Great Thou Art." And so it brings me back to my grandmother when I hear that song, an Amazing Grace. Well, that's why we're here. We're prodigals.
It's so upsetting to me when people write something off like that just because it came from a Protestant source or something.
Yeah.
That's not the question. The question is it theologically sound? Okay, if it's not, maybe tweak some of the lyrics and then use it. But to me, the greater tragedy is when we are trying to emulate what they as Protestants do well and doing it terribly when we're trying to emulate it, right? So whether that's, we're supposed to do contemporary music because it works really well for the Protestants, so let's do a contemporary band, and then it's awful. Or we're supposed to be like them and have really big sound system and music and full band and bunch of singers and stuff, so we'll do that thing because there's a really popular one down the street that does that, and everyone loves it.
You just can't.
Well, if you're going to do it, you're going to have to invest what they've invested into it. You're going to have to research how to really do this. You can't just there's no cookie cutter.
You can't wing it.
You can't. Well, yeah, and there are some specific examples that I'm not going to name off, but man, I've seen it just done so poorly, and you can't just get away with it because you pay a lot for the sound system and have a million musicians on the stage. It's just not the same.
Well, I've been to a couple of Christian churches, where they're like movie theaters. You're in a theater and there's a band and everything else.
Yeah.
And they have the drummer in the box and they're jamming, man. And I'm not saying that it's not inspirational and whatever. Yeah. And I've sat through, and even some of the sermons have been good. Accurate as much as they, whatever. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, so when do I get Jesus? I'm wanting to go to mass. I'm wanting the full Monty. I don't just want to be teased with the periphery of Jesus is this and Jesus is that, when I know that if I can go to the Catholic Mass and I can actually have Jesus within me alive, I want that. So,
well, a lot of the reason that Protestant big box scenarios are able to and make a priority to invest to that degree into the worship experience is because that is their sacrament.
Yeah, that's right.
That is where they encounter God.
Yeah.
Because they don't
Interesting.
have the
They don't have the
sacrament of
Eucharist. Yeah, they don't have the Eucharist.
They have to make that as explosively of a sensational, and I mean that word literally, right? Not like, but like literally
A tangible
the senses, the
senses,
tangible,
yeah.
They have to make it like that because that is how people will come away with whether or not they experienced God or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to be careful. I totally agree with you, Nick, about incorporating that into our liturgy. For example, a lot of these youth masses, they want to make the music contemporary because that's what appeals to young people. But to me, where the rubber hits the road, are they still going to mass when they're in college?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Because they didn't have the music we had. Well, are you there for the music? You're there for Jesus.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And
so is the music drawing you closer to Jesus, or is the music enhancing? Or even if there was no music, what are you there for? And so if the music is not there, I'm not going to go.
And not just Jesus abstractly, but Jesus in the Eucharist. Is it pulling you into the Eucharist?
Right.
Yes.
And the full meaning of why you're there. And that's why I think, like I've been to, so far now in my life, I've been to 10 traditional Latin masses. And I'm just going to tell you that there is no doubt when you're there why you're there. Like, 100%, even if you don't understand what's going on, because the first couple of times I went, I was like, I have no idea what's going on, but I knew that Jesus was there. And I knew it. And there was no getting away from it. And the first one I went to was a low mass. There was no singing at all. It was quiet, and then babies and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But then I've gone to, most of them been high masses since then. And with the singing, I just had a cantata a couple of weeks ago. I was able to go to one. And that was it's just transcendent. It really is.
But it pulls you into the mystery.
It pulls you
Eucharist.
into it. Yeah. Deacon and I, this is a really funny story. It's a good way to take this out. Deacon and I met last night so that we could talk. And I picked this random restaurant because there were a few open. And I get there, and there's a waitress at the table cleaning off the table in front of me. And she was like, hey, I'll be with you in a second. I was like, no problem. And on and on and on. And we talked. And then she was like, I was like, well, yeah, I'm in town to record, a podcast. And she was like, oh, really? Because she didn't know anything about that. So I told her about it. And she was like, man, that's really weird. She goes, she says, I'm trying to figure it out. She said, I just went to my first traditional Latin mass yesterday. My girlfriend took me. This is a waitress that's like 20-something years old sitting it's 10 o'clock at night because his flight was late and I drove in. And it was like, you got to be kidding me.
That is incredible.
And so I got to introduce her to Deacon, and we talked, and I gave her my phone number. We downloaded the app. She has the app on her phone, the Awaken.
App.
She has the awakenapp.io on her phone, and she's now following the Prodigal Life on Facebook and I think YouTube. But literally, that's what God does. You know what I mean? Through just, what do they say? Faith and music, you know what I mean? But we were just there talking, and she said and this was what touched my heart. She looked at me and she was like, I've been to a couple of masses because she went to a regular. She says, but she took me to the Latin mass. She says, I don't cry very much. And I was like, really? She goes, well, I cried at my friend's wedding. She goes, but that's different. And I was like, yeah. She goes, I just bawled. And I said, that's the Holy Spirit. I says, he's really present. And it's not that he's not present in all of the masses, because he is. Jesus is present. If you believe, you have to believe. But when you're at the traditional mass, man, there's no doubt that he is present. And and you can be so moved by it, and the prayers in it, and the music, and the depth of it, and the Gregorian chant, and you're just, it's the full Monty experience, you know what I mean? But I've been to some beautiful. I was just at mass for the vigil. And it was, Norvis Odo, but it was beautiful. They did the candles and the dim lights and the fire in the back of the church, and they brought it in and they chanted, not in Latin, but they chanted, the proclamation, and it was beautiful as well. But it goes back to that same question you said, Nick. Why are you there? Like, what, and you said, Deacon, what are you can't be of this world. You've got to be in the world. You know what I mean? But why is the music, make it so the music enhances your experience, doesn't detract from it.
Well, even in the Eastern rites, right, that are with the Catholic Church, the Byzantine, Coptic, Syro-Malabar, Maronite, they sing most of the Mass.
It's beautiful.
Most of it's sung.
Yeah.
Readings, You know,
Yeah.
and even the liturgical prayers are a lot of it is sung.
Yeah.
And so for them, you know, music is woven into the fabric of worship itself. You know, and
It's
just
beautiful.
it's really is beautiful. So yeah, music is you know, I definitely important. I think for liturgy and for our lives outside of the mass as well.
Amen.
Yeah.
So here we are. And we already told you that the Awaken app, go to the Awaken app IO so that you can get some great content and a bunch of stuff. And Deacon's going to tell you how you can support us, because we're really trying to do this so for you. You know, it's for us too, because we're on a journey together, right?
Yeah.
We're pilgrimaging together. But how do they support us?
Yeah,
Deacon?
you want to support the Prodigal Life podcast, just go to theprodigallife.com. You'll see there different levels that you're able to, different angel levels that you're able to give. So be an angel and support the Prodigal Life podcast.